There's a guy called Matthew Sheffield. I don't know anything about him, but his Twitter feed has been going around the interwebs in the last wee while. And I'll just read through it, right? CNN just removed far-right panelist for a racist remark against progressive commentator Mehdi Hassan. This was the right decision, but as a former TV booker, what happened is part of a much bigger problem. Before going independent, I used to be a producer at The Hill, which is the footage we were just showing, on its Rising program. Like all mainstream media shows, we were constantly trying to have balanced panel discussions, but we always have a problem. It was very difficult to find Republicans who weren't crazy. Frequently, my colleagues would book right-wing commentators, and as someone who'd come out of conservative media, I often had to review them before they were put on air. More than a few times, people who were alt-right activists were booked before I removed them. Other times, we couldn't find anyone who actually was qualified to talk about the news on the day in a non-frothing manner. We had people offered who had made racist remarks, people who had stalked women, etc. The Republican media, meanwhile, make zero attempts at balance. We also had several commentators who had expressed Christian supremacist ideas, which meant, of course, they couldn't possibly add anything useful on Israel or Islam. This is what happened to the very long-suffering Abby Phillip tonight. Thread goes on, as you can see, but that's a bit of a snapshot, I guess, into someone whose job it is to vet the media. And I promised last night that I would tell you the story. I have sat in the News Talk ZB newsroom, and I've heard, we need someone to comment on this story, like a crazy conservative Christian dude or dudette. Who can we get? Anyone want to guess the name that comes up immediately? Bob McCoskey.
Yeah.
Bob McCoskey. So the media will use Bob McCoskey, certainly in the past, because they wanted a lunatic conservative Christian commentator. I've heard it, I've said it, I've seen it going on. So these things aren't just at big American television networks, they're everywhere. But maybe this is the moment where the producers of the show go, either maybe we need to vet a bit better, or maybe we shouldn't put the American version of the crazy conservative Christian up to make comment. Chewie, you've been quiet up there. Any thoughts to wrap up?
Look, I think one of the issues here when they had these panel shows is, I guess, this weird sense for balance, right? Is you obviously want to have a balanced story, but sometimes these topics that they cover, like I always come back to, say, climate change or vaccination stuff, is that you get one person that says, yes, it's real and we should do something about it, and for balance we have someone else, and that almost puts those two opinions on an equal standing.
Yeah.
When it should be like, well, let's get 9 people to say that climate change is real and an existential threat, and then we'll get the one dude that thinks it's a Jewish conspiracy, would probably be a better way to do it. Well, it wouldn't be a better way to do it, but it would be a fairer way to do it. And I think what happened here with the CNN thing is this guy just has come straight out of his own Twitter echo chamber, thinking he's the king shit and can just say the nastiest stuff ever, and realizes that he's not online anymore. Like we had, when was that story that we had where they were talking about what is it, the cost of living and that sort of thing, and they had the guy that was a builder, and you dug in a little bit on who he was. And,
the guy
and
who we called
the
guy that we called the fat Duncan Garner, that guy.
Yes.
With the slick back hair. That was TV3, and he was a National Party operative. So
that's
but
our
TV3 put him up as a builder. Right?
Yeah. With no context or that sort of thing. And I think that's the whole thing, is that we want to hear comments from ordinary people, but ordinary people don't have direct links to news organizations and can turn up within a half hour to be on a digital filmed bit or a talking head show or whatever. It's people that are connected in some way.
I'm also interested, Cherie, I want to get your thoughts on what we've just read out, but as Chewie's talking, it makes me think, how often do reporters go, I know someone in that industry, I'll just get the person I know because that's easy to go and film someone, even if they're a mate or a colleague or a friend of a friend. You know them, so you go and get them. That kind of thing happened pretty often. And also, what are your thoughts about the booker and his story he just told?
Yeah, no, it does happen. And even myself as a reporter, there'd be a lot of times where maybe you've worked with someone in a certain industry for a previous story, and now you've got something similar. So it's just easier often to go back to that person and go, hey, we've worked together before, you know how this works. Can you come in and do a quick interview? Mostly that would be because you're under pretty tight deadlines and you kind of have to turn stuff around pretty quickly, as you were saying before about often you might want like an everyday person to be able to talk to, but they don't always have the right connection or be available or want to do that kind of thing. So that is often what happens. And yeah, I mean, there are definitely a lot of cases where we would find someone to speak to something because we know it would fit the angle of the story or the news clip or whatever it is, for that bulletin, for instance. Like it does happen quite a bit. And I think it is really interesting when you watch how a newsroom works and to see how and who they select for what sort of stories and to commentate on. But yeah, it was really interesting reading through that thread and how they do book people and vet people. I don't know if we've seen anything like that in New Zealand that I can think top of my head to that maybe extreme, but I can imagine it's probably a bit harder in a place like America, to be able to properly vet all these people. But it is an interesting and challenging one. And unfortunately, it probably does happen a fair bit, though, where someone is booked on to talk to an issue because producers or reporters know that they're going to give a really, really strong sort of opinion against or for whatever that angle is.